Good morning. My name is Megan Edwards of Focus Communications, and today we're getting an introduction to DevvStream. DevvStream is a carbon streaming investment company who provides upfront capital for sustainability projects in exchange for carbon credit rights. Now, the company invests in green projects that generate renewable energy, provide energy efficiencies, eliminate or reduce emissions, or sequester carbon directly from the air. And joining me today is DevvStream CEO Sunny Trinh. Sunny, it's very nice to meet you and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Megan. I'm excited to be part of the show.
So DevvStream is a private company with an upcoming listing on the NEO exchange in Canada. So let's start things off. For those new to the space, with what exactly is a carbon credit? And could you give us a bit of an overview of this space?
Yeah, so a carbon credit is a tradable permit or certificate that provides the holder of the credit the right to emit 1 ton of carbon dioxide or an equivalent greenhouse gas in order to reduce one's carbon footprint. On the flip side, funds from the buyers of these carbon credits are used to finance projects that reduce emissions. So without these additional funds from the carbon credits, many of these green projects would never come to life.
Okay. And listening to your recent webinar, it sounds like DevvStream has been in the works for a number of years. Can you provide a bit of a background on yourself and the company and how it all came together?
Yeah, so I have both an engineering and sales and marketing background and came from the technology and semiconductor space where I worked for over 25 years. Most of the time was spent at the 2 largest semiconductor distributors where I worked with literally hundreds of OEMs and chip suppliers. And then during this time, over say the past 10 to 12 years, I also worked with both companies, ESG, and back then it was called CSR, for those that remember, for some of the older folks. So I worked with both the ESG and CSR team, and was always really interested in the sustainability world and trying to do right for the environment and so forth. So most recently, I was a VP of Strategic Partnerships at one of these distributors, Avnet. Avnet was a $19 billion company back then, so I think it's $21 billion now. So during my last 6 months at Avnet, I noticed a trend that I'd never really seen before. And that trend was that just about every company I spoke to was gaining interest in ESG, sustainability, and really trying to improve their carbon footprint. So I tried to convince the CEO and board of directors at Avnet to put more focus on this and really allow me to run an ESG solutions team. I also felt that this is the largest opportunity I've ever seen in my career, and the first one that was pretty much applicable to all of Avnet's 2 million customers worldwide. But unfortunately, the semiconductor industry was in the middle of a chip shortage, and Avnet really didn't have the expertise or wanted to go into something so new and foreign to them. So I decided this opportunity was too good to pass up, and also something I really felt strongly about and wanted to spend more time doing, and left what I call my cushy corporate VP position at Avnet. And at that time, I was working with a blockchain company called Devio, and knew that they were developing an ESG platform. So I reached out to their CEO, Tom Anderson, and started working with them on their platform. At the same time, I connected with more than a dozen or so companies working on sustainability projects. And I was already familiar with the carbon credit market and noticed that all these companies, they weren't really doing anything with carbon credits, mainly because it was too complicated or they really didn't know how. And so I asked them, hey, if I invested in you, gave some money up front for your projects without taking any equity, would you be willing to transfer the rights of the carbon credits and really be able to tap into that financial vehicle? And every single one of these companies gave a resounding yes, because for them, this was a way to bring more projects to market, which also helps the world further as well. So that's when I realized that we have a really interesting business model, and with my many years in electronics distribution and ties to so many different companies, I have access to hundreds of these type of companies, and that was the beginning of DevvStream.
Wow, that's great. So there's a few companies in this space. What differentiates DevvStream from the competition?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned earlier, similar to other streaming companies, we fund projects upfront in exchange for the future rights to an asset. And in this case, the assets are carbon or other environmental credits. There are a few other carbon streaming companies in the market with similar models. However, there are 2 major areas where we differentiate ourselves. First, I feel we're the only company that addresses all 3 facets of ES and G. So in addition to addressing the environmental issues of global warming, which all the different streaming companies do, we look for projects that also have a social impact and provide benefits to the local people and communities. In addition, we utilize a proprietary blockchain-based ESG platform, Devio's DevvESG that I mentioned earlier, that provides the highest level of governance. And then the second major differentiation is that other streaming companies focus on nature-based projects, where DevStream, on the other hand, we focus on technology-based projects and technology-based solutions. I know that nature-based projects are fairly popular right now, and I think a big reason is because there aren't many good alternatives. But I do think that in the long run, people will start moving away from them for several reasons. One, many of the nature-based projects are really only maintaining the status quo and not doing anything actively to reduce emissions. For example, when you pay a forest reserve to not chop down trees, it is important, but again, it only keeps us at our current state. And secondly, the data from many of these nature-based projects are only estimates calculated from models. So they are fairly easy to manipulate and overestimate. There's been several nature-based projects recently that were shut down by the local government because of issues like this. Our projects, on the other hand, are technology-based with precise data going into a blockchain where every calculation and transaction can be viewed by all stakeholders. So when we have a renewable energy project, for example, we know exactly how many kilowatt hours of energy that's being generated and how many kilograms of carbon dioxide that's being mitigated because of this new energy source. So that's just one example, but yeah, I mean, I can go on and on. So.
Well, last question for you, Sunny. Could you give us an overview of why investors should take notice of DevVStream for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, so if you take a look at the carbon market, it's fairly new, but it's growing, but yet it's already massive, right? If you take a look at the voluntary carbon market, it's over $1 billion right now, while the compliance market is almost $900 billion. So we're talking almost $1 trillion market that's still growing and still in its infancy. And DevStream participates in both compliance and voluntary market. And second, in order for companies and organizations and even governments to meet their net zero goals, almost all of them will have to buy carbon credits at some point. Right. What this means is that this is an industry that essentially affects every company and organization in the world. This also means that the demand for carbon credits will far exceed supply. And by supply, I mean high value certified carbon credits. DevStream currently has over 80 projects under evaluation and almost a dozen under ROI or term sheet with two with having definitive contracts. So the 80 projects that we're looking at has the potential to generate well over 25 million carbon credits per year. And then lastly, the majority of these projects, again, like I said before, are technology based, making us really the only streaming company with this focus. So to summarize why investors should take notice of DevStream, we are and will be a leader in a growing market that is already massive and already have a very healthy pipeline of projects and investment opportunities.
Well, it sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you so much for the introduction to DevVStream. Definitely we'll have you on the show again in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you, Megan.